I want to tell you something about human nature. Every human being, without exception, wants to feel significant, to feel that they matter, that what they do has meaning, that other people see their value and recognize it. This is not vanity, it is not weakness. It is one of the deepest laws of human nature. And when you understand this law, not just intellectually, but really practically in how you interact with people every day, something remarkable happens. Your relationships improve, your communication becomes more effective. People respond to you differently. They open up more, they trust you more, they want to work with you, help you, be around you, because you have learned to do something that most people do not do naturally. You have learned to make other people feel significant, not with flattery, not with false compliments, with genuine attention, with real curiosity, with the specific, sincere acknowledgement of what another person has done or said or thought. This is a communication skill, and like all communication skills, it transfers directly into English because the most powerful English is not the most grammatically perfect English. It is the English that makes the person in front of you feel that you are genuinely interested in them. Today's story is about a young man named Leandro. Leandro learned about human nature, and it changed not just how he saw the world, but how he communicated in English. This is his story. Meet Leandro. Leandro was 27 years old. He worked at a human resources consulting firm, helping companies find the right people for the right roles, interviewing candidates, building relationships with client companies. His work was entirely about people, understanding them, connecting with them, helping them find the right fit. In his native language, he was very good at this. He had a natural warmth. He made people feel comfortable. He asked good questions and listened to the answers. In English, something was getting lost, not the words. He had studied English for 14 months. His vocabulary was solid. His grammar was reliable. His written English was professional. But in English conversations, he felt like a smaller version of himself, less warm, less curious, more focused on whether the sentence was correct than on the person in front of him. The technical accuracy was there. The human connection was not. He had been reading widely, books about psychology, human behavior, the way people think and feel and make decisions. He found this material deeply interesting and directly relevant to his HR work. One book had a chapter about the deep human need for significance, the need to feel that one matters, that one is seen. He read that chapter and thought immediately about his English conversations. He had been so focused on the technical correctness of his English that he had forgotten to make the other person feel significant. The insight call. He sat with the insight for an evening. He thought about his best conversations in his native language. What made them good? What made people open up, trust him, leave the conversation feeling positive? He made a list. He asked questions that showed he had been paying attention. He remembered details people had mentioned previously and referred back to them. He acknowledged people's experiences specifically, not just, yes, I understand, but that sounds genuinely difficult, or that must have been a proud moment. He celebrated other people's achievements out loud. He showed real curiosity, not polite curiosity, but the kind that made people want to keep talking. He looked at the list. None of those things required advanced vocabulary. None of them required complex grammar. They required attention, genuine interest, and the choice to be fully present with the other person and to let them feel that presence. He had been bringing all of that to his native language conversations automatically. He had been leaving all of it behind when he switched to English because the switch required so much cognitive effort that the human dimension had been the thing that fell away. He made a decision. He was going to deliberately bring the human dimension back into his English conversations, not by improving his grammar, by improving his attention to the person. Lesson 1, the significance practice. The following week, Leandro started what he called his significance practice. In every English conversation, He committed to doing one specific thing, finding something genuine to acknowledge about the other person, not a generic compliment, something specific, something that showed he had actually been paying attention to what this particular person had said or done. A colleague had prepared a difficult report under time pressure. In English, Leandro said, "That report was really solid, especially given how tight the deadline was. I could see the work that went into it." The colleague looked slightly surprised, then genuinely pleased. An international client had described a challenge their company was facing. Leandro said, "That sounds like a genuinely complex problem. You are managing a lot of competing pressures at once." The client paused, then said, "Yes, exactly. It is complex. I appreciate that you see that." A job candidate in an English language interview had described leaving a stable job to try something more aligned with their values. Leandro said that took real courage. Not many people make that kind of move. The candidate visibly relaxed. The conversation became warmer and more open. 3 interactions, 3 specific acknowledgments, all 3 producing something that his previous technically correct but connection absent English had not. People feeling seen. He wrote in his notebook, the significance practice. Find something genuine to acknowledge in every English conversation. Specific, not generic. The response is immediate. People open up, they trust more, they talk more freely. This costs nothing except attention, and attention is exactly what I can give. Daily English sentences. Repeat after me. I find something genuine to acknowledge in every English conversation. Specific acknowledgement shows that I was truly paying attention. That sounds genuinely complex. You are managing a lot. That took real courage. Not many people make that kind of move. People feel seen when their specific situation is named. The significance practice costs only attention. I give attention freely. Genuine acknowledgement is more powerful than perfect grammar. Lesson 2, curiosity as communication. 1 month into his significance practice, Leandro added a second principle, genuine curiosity. He had read something that stayed with him. The most interesting people are not the ones who are interesting to listen to. They are the ones who are genuinely interested in you. He had been approaching English conversations as a performance, trying to produce good English, trying to sound competent and professional. He decided to approach them as an investigation instead. Every English conversation, he was going to be genuinely curious about the person, about what they thought, about how they saw the situation, about what mattered to them, not as a technique, as an actual practice of interest. He started asking different kinds of questions, not just the professional, what do you need or how can I help? But what has surprised you most about this process? What is the part of this that you find most challenging? If you could change one thing about how this works, what would it be? Open questions, questions that show genuine interest in the other person's experience, not just in the information they could provide. The conversations changed. They became longer, more genuine. People started sharing things they had not planned to share, thoughts, concerns, observations, because the questions had created a space where sharing felt natural and welcomed. And the English in those conversations, his English, became less monitored and more natural because his attention was on the other person rather than on his own performance. He wrote in his notebook, "Curiosity unlocks conversations. Open questions create space. When my attention is on them, my English becomes more natural. The self-monitoring decreases, the connection increases. Genuine interest is a communication superpower." Daily English sentences. Repeat after me. What has surprised you most about this process? What is the part of this that you find most challenging? I am genuinely curious about how you see this situation. Open questions create space for real conversation. When my attention is on them, my English becomes more natural. The most interesting people are genuinely interested in others. Curiosity is a communication superpower. I practice it daily. Lesson 3, understanding the difficult conversation. 3 months into his dual practice, significance and curiosity, Leandro had a difficult professional conversation. A candidate he had been working with for 2 months had not been selected for a role they had wanted very much. The candidate was disappointed. Leandro had to call them in English and deliver the news. He thought about human nature, about the need to feel significant, about what this person needed to hear, not just the factual information of the outcome, but the human acknowledgement of what they had put into this process. He made the call. He began. I want to start by saying that the 2 months you put into this process were genuinely impressive. The preparation you showed in every stage, the research, the interviews, the way you presented yourself, that was a high standard. He then delivered the news. He continued, I know this is disappointing, and I think the disappointment reflects how much this role meant to you, which is itself a good thing to know about yourself. Then, I want to know how you are feeling, and I also want to talk about what comes next if you are ready for that. The candidate was quiet for a moment. Then they said, Thank you for saying that. It helps to hear that the effort was seen. The conversation lasted 25 minutes. By the end, the candidate was talking about next steps with genuine energy rather than retreating into disappointment. Leandro had applied everything: significance, acknowledging the effort specifically; curiosity, asking how they were feeling; human nature, understanding that the disappointment needed acknowledgement before the solution could land. He wrote, difficult call, delivered bad news with the law of human nature in mind. Candidate said, thank you for saying that. It helps to hear the effort was seen. The human dimension made this possible. English carried it, but the understanding of people drove it. Daily English sentences. Repeat after me. The effort you put in was genuinely impressive. I see that clearly. I know this is disappointing, and that tells you something good about yourself. I want to know how you are feeling before we talk about next steps. The human dimension makes difficult conversations possible. Acknowledgement before solution. Always. In any language. Thank you for saying that. 6 words that genuine attention earned. The law of human nature. Everyone needs to feel that their effort was seen. Lesson 4. 1 year. A different communicator. 1 year after his insight about significance and human nature, Leandro was presenting at an internal company event. His firm held quarterly knowledge-sharing sessions. Staff presented ideas, research, and insights relevant to their HR work. Leandro presented in English on what he had been learning about human nature, communication, and what made professional conversations genuinely effective. 40 people, a mix of native and non-native English speakers. He presented for 20 minutes. He talked about the significance practice, about genuine curiosity, about the law of human nature and how understanding it had changed not just his English conversations, but his work as an HR professional. At the end, questions from the audience, several of them detailed and engaged, the kind of questions that came from people who had been genuinely following along. After the session, his manager found him. She said, that was one of the best presentations I have heard at one of these events. Not because of the content, though the content was excellent, because of how present you were, how much you seemed to actually see the audience. How much you seemed to actually see the audience. He thought about the significance practice, about genuine curiosity, about 1 year of bringing the law of human nature into every English conversation. He wrote in his notebook, Year 1, 20-minute English presentation. Manager said, how much you seemed to actually see the audience. That is the law of human nature applied to English communication. He wrote in his notebook, Year 1, 20-minute English presentation. Manager said, how much you seem to actually see the audience. That is the law of human nature applied to English communication. See people. Make them feel significant. The English is the vehicle. The human understanding is the engine. Daily English sentences. Repeat after me. Year 1. English presentation. Manager said, I seem to see the audience. The English is the vehicle. The human understanding is the engine. See people. Make them feel significant. That is the law of human nature. 1 year of significance and curiosity built this communication. How you make people feel is what they remember, not your grammar. The law of human nature works in every language, including English. Understand people, connect with people. That is great communication. Final words. See the person. Leandro's story is simple. He had solid English, missing the human dimension. He learned about the law of human nature, the deep need every person has to feel significant, to feel seen, to feel that they matter. He brought that understanding into his English conversations. Specific acknowledgement, genuine curiosity, the human dimension before and during the professional one. 1 year later, a presentation where the audience felt seen, a manager who described it as one of the best she had heard, a practice of English communication that went far deeper than grammar and vocabulary. Maybe your English is technically solid too. Maybe you produce correct, accurate, reliable English. But I want to ask you one question. Do the people you communicate with feel genuinely seen by you? If the answer is not always, here is where to start. In your next English conversation, find one specific thing to acknowledge about the person, something real, something that shows you were paying attention to them specifically, and ask one genuine question, not a professional question, a human one, something that shows you are actually curious about their experience. These two things, acknowledgement and curiosity, activate the law of human nature. They make people feel significant. And people who feel significant in any language open up, trust you, connect with you, want to work with you and help you and be in conversation with you. Your English carries your communication. Make sure what it carries is worth receiving. See you in the next one. Stay calm, stay curious, and understand the law of human nature.